he ordered the heavenly soldier to descend to the earth on the 15th day of the first lunar month. But when they looked at the human world, they thought the earth was already burning. On the 16th day of the first lunar month, fire will consume your body. Hi there, Ziola here. Okay, we're finally here. My goodness. So 2 weeks ago, we talked about how Lunar New Year came to be, and guess what? We're still celebrating it. Literally goes on for 15 days, you know? You think Thanksgiving is all about food and crazy family? Let me tell you, when you're in China and you happen to have a big family, you're basically with them for almost 2 weeks straight. So yes, I finally get back to my work. But this year was special. This year I actually celebrated the New Year in China, and I had a chance to join my grandfather in a family ancestral ceremony, something that has been part of our small village's history for over 600 years. And for the first time in many years, all of my distant cousins were all there. It was probably the most complete reunion we've ever had in a long time. So I had to show you. I really have to show you the moment that they line up to give New Year greetings to my grandfather. It was beautiful. It was incredible to witness, very traditional and very touching. I know, it's crazy. But because my granddad is in his 80s, so this was considered as a great blessing to him. And now, as we're approaching the final day, there's a big celebration because it's the first full moon of the year. Okay, so as Chinese people, we have a thing for full moon. It represents reunion with our family. And for people who didn't grow up in Asian culture, it might be confusing because there are actually several important full moons throughout the year. So the first one usually refers to as the Lantern Festival, which we're going to talk about it today. It's the first full moon in lunar calendar. A second one you may or may not know is the Zhongyuan Festival, which is the full moon in the 7th month of the lunar calendar. It's a festival for remembering our family members that has passed away. And a third significant full moon festival is the Mid-Autumn Festival, or also known as the Mooncake Festival, when the family gather together to celebrate harvest. But don't worry, we'll have good videos and stories when it comes to that time of the year. But for now, there's a lot of fun stuff to do on the day of Lantern Festival. And depending on where you're from in China, you might heard it called Shangyuan Festival or also Yuanxiao Festival. So the first thing, of course, as the name has already given away, is the lantern show. So traditionally, the lanterns were all made out of paper. People would go out to the park or night market to look at all the different lantern displays. It's kind of like those Christmas lights tour in America. And sometimes, if the park really tries to bring the old tradition back, there will be riddles written on the lanterns or on the slip of paper attached to them. If you get the right answer, you win a little small prize. But of course, nowadays, for safety reasons, most of them are using LED lights instead. And as for why we hang lanterns and admire the glowing lights during the Lanterns Festival, there's a beautiful old legend behind it. So long ago, high above the clouds, there lived many gods. Each of them had their own responsibilities watching over the human world. And among them, there was a heavenly bird, a divine creature with incredible powers. From time to time, fierce beasts would be sent down to the human world, harming the people and livestock. In order to protect themselves, the villagers would gather together to hunt these dangerous animals. So one day, a sacred bird lost its way and accidentally descended to earth. It was covered in brilliant, colorful feathers and shimmered in the sunlight. Its voice was soft and melodic. And just then, a hunter happened to pass by. He had never seen such a beautiful bird before. Amazed, he thought to himself, I must capture it. So without realizing what it truly was, he quietly lifted his bow, and with a sharp whoosh, the arrow flew. The poor bird fluttered its wing for a few times and fell. News of bird's death quickly reached the heavenly emperor, the highest ruler in the heavens. He had a bit of a fiery temper. When he heard that his beloved bird had been killed by human, he was furious. In his anger, he ordered the heavenly soldier to descend to the earth on the 15th day of the first lunar month and set the human world ablaze, to burn down every house, every animal, everything. But the heavenly emperor had a kind and compassionate daughter. When she learned of his father's plan, she was deeply worried, so she secretly transformed herself into a beautiful fairy and came down to earth to warn the people ahead of time. The villagers were terrified when they heard the news. They could hardly imagine such a disaster falling upon them. Compared to the gods, humans were small and powerless as ants. Just when all hope seemed to be lost, a wise old man stepped up with an idea. He told everyone that on the 14th, 15th, and the 16th day of the lunar month, every household should hang red lanterns outside of doors and set up firecrackers. And so the people did exactly that. Red lanterns were lit everywhere, glowing warmly through the night, and fireworks cracked loudly, and the colorful fireworks burst across the sky, filling the air with smoke and light. And when the 15th arrived, the heavenly soldier came down and ready to set the world on fire. But when they looked at the human world, they saw flames and smoke everywhere. They thought the earth was already burning, so they returned to report to the heavenly emperor. In hearing this, the emperor believed that the punishment has already been carried out, and so he did not send another command. And from that day on, every year on the 15th day of the first lunar month, people hang red lanterns high and light fireworks, remembering the night when wisdom and unity saved them. But nowadays, for fireworks, the government has different rules and ways to execute them each year. But you can still find good fireworks in smaller villages. Anyway, and here comes my favorite part of the festival. Drum roll, please. It's Yuanxiao / Tangyuan, and depending on the way of making them, they're called different names. But tasting-wise, they all taste quite similar to me.
Hi there! Alright, I have two bowls over here. Take a look. One of them is Yuanxiao and the other is Tangyuan. And just take a look and take a guess which one is Yuanxiao and which one is Tangyuan, and we'll let you know at the end of the video.
Yuanxiao or Tangyuan are round dumplings made of glutinous rice flour. And they're usually filled with things like black sesame paste, red bean paste, crushed walnuts, mixed nuts, or sweet jujube paste. But nowadays, people are getting a little pretty creative with fillings like matcha, chocolate. I've even seen coffee and durian. Yeah, I don't really know about those interesting flavors. But personally, I still prefer the hawthorn filling. It's sweet and a little tangy. And that's my comfort choice. In southern China, they even have savory tangyuan with meat or vegetable fillings, which honestly sounds even crazier to a northerner like me. So tangyuan can be boiled in water, deep fried, or served in sweet fermented rice soup. As for me, I like to keep it simple, just like boil them in water. So classic, soft, chewy, warm. If you tried any other version, let me know. I'm curious. So, so why do we eat Tangyuan or Yuanxiao on this day? Well, that also comes from a legend. So during Han Dynasty, which was about 1800 years ago, there was a court official named Dongfang Shuo, who was favored by the emperor at the time. He was known for being clever, witty, and kind-hearted. So one year, after days and days of heavy snow, Dongfang went into the imperial garden to pick plum blossom for the emperor. And as soon as he walked in, he noticed something strange. There was a young palace maid standing by the well, crying, and she was about to jump into the well. So he immediately rushed in and stopped her. He gently asked her, what was going on, girl? Why would she wanted to even think about doing something like that? And it turned out her name was Yuanxiao. So what happened was that back home, she had elderly parents and a younger sister. But ever since she entered the palace, she had never been allowed to go see them. And every year, when the winter slowly faded away and spring just beginning, when families were supposed to gather together to celebrate together, that was when she missed them the most. She felt like, if she couldn't go back home, if she couldn't be there for her parents or fulfill her duty as a daughter, then what's the point of living? And in that moment, she truly felt hopeless. And when Dongfang heard her story, he was deeply moved. However, her parents were living outside of the capital city, and without the emperor's approval, they could not enter the city. And Yuanxiao could not go out of the city without the approval of the emperor either. Yet, Dongfang had came up with a solution. He promised her that he would find a way to reunite her and her family. And a few days later, Dongfang quietly left the palace and set up a fortune-telling stand on the busiest street of the capital city, Chang'an. And pretty soon, a crowd started forming around him. Everyone wanted their fortune to be told. But then, something weird happened. No matter who stepped up, no matter what they asked about, the answer was always the same. Every single fortune he wrote carries out this line. So on the 16th day of the first lunar month, fire will consume your body. And just like that, panic spread, word traveled fast, and within hours, the whole city was on edge. People rushed to Dongfang, surrounding him, asking what it meant. Some were confused, some were terrified. They begged him to explain. They begged him to tell them, how to avoid the disaster. Lowering his voice, he said, on the evening of the 15th day, the fire deity will send down a lady dressed in red to inspect the city. She was been ordered to burn the city to the ground. I have a written message for you. Take it to His Majesty, and perhaps the emperor can think of a solution. And with that, he casually dropped the red card on the ground and just walked away with no explanation. The townspeople picked it up, completely alarmed, and rushed straight to the palace to report everything to the emperor. So the emperor unfolded the red card and read, Chang'an is destined for disaster, and fire will burn the imperial palace. For on the 15th day, flame will rise, and the night will glow red. And you can imagine, he was shaken. This wasn't a small rumor anymore. This was a direct warning. So without wasting a second, he immediately called in Dongfang to discuss the solution. And Dongfang just pretended to think for a moment. Then he said calmly, I've heard that the fire deity was especially found on Tangyuan. And doesn't the palace maid Yuanxiao make the best Tangyuan for you? So on the night of the 15th, let Yuanxiao prepare Tangyuan, and your majesty can burn incense and offer it as a tribute to fire deity. At the same time, please issue an order throughout the city. Every household must make Tangyuan and present them as offering as well. And then, he added, have the entire city hang lanterns with their own names and the names of their loved one on it, instead of firecrackers, and release fireworks. Let the sky glow red and let the street fill with smoke. Make it look like though the city is already burning. And one more thing. Allow the people outside of the city to come into Chang'an and that night to see the lantern. They can blend into the crowd and in doing so, escape the disaster. The emperor was overjoyed when he heard this plan, and he immediately issued an imperial decree, ordering everything to be carried out exactly like Dongfang just suggested. When on the 15th day finally arrived, Chang'an was transformed. Lanterns were hanged everywhere, streets were decorated in bright colors, and a crowd of people filled the city. It was lively, joyful, almost magical. And among those who entered the city to admire the lanterns were Yuanxiao's parents and her younger sister. And as they wandered through the city streets, they suddenly noticed the grand palace lantern with the word Yuanxiao written on it. And startled and overwhelmed with emotion, they began calling out loudly, Yuanxiao, Yuanxiao! And hearing her name carried through the crowd, Yuanxiao rushed towards the sound. And at last, after so long, she was able to reunite with her family. The city remained bright and bustling all night long. And just as Dongfang had planned, nothing happened, and Chang'an was safe. The emperor was overjoyed as well. From that year on, he ordered that every 15th day of the first lunar month, Tangyuan should be prepared and offered it to the fire deity. The entire city would hang lanterns and set off fireworks just as they had that night. And because Yuanxiao made the best Tangyuan of all, people began to calling the festival Yuanxiao Festival. And so today, when we celebrate the Lantern Festival, we're not just lighting lanterns or eating tangyuan, we're remembering stories. Stories of light in the darkness, stories of family longing to be together. The lanterns that have once tricked the heavens have become symbol of hope. And the tangyuan that has once carried out a girl's name now carries out the meaning of reunion. They're round and they're soft, just like the full moon above us. In Chinese culture, roundness really means something to us. The full moon stands for completeness. And so you can see that tangyuan are round, lanterns are round, even the character for tuanyuan, meaning reunion, looks round if you look at it. So as if it's a reminding to us that everything eventually comes full circle. On the 15th night of the first lunar month, families gather together under the first full moon of the year. And they share sweet bowls of tangyuan. They looked up to the same glowing sky. And maybe that's the most beautiful part of all. No matter how far we are apart, we're still under the same moon. Happy Lanterns Festival. See you next time.
Alright, if you guessed it right, this one is Yuanxiao and this one is Tangyuan. Did you get it right?